Hi, I'm Chris Rogers. I'm the founder of Healthy Private Practice, which is a family of products and services designed to help clinicians in private healthcare grow just that, a healthy private practice, whatever healthy looks like for them. That includes various freebies and advice on the Healthy Private Practice site, my online membership, Private Practice Surgery, which is full of courses, resources, community, perks, and do-it-yourself business and marketing advice, and our done-for-you marketing agency, Good Practice Consulting. Before that, I worked for BMI Healthcare and Circle Health Group in various sales, marketing and business development roles, and before that I was with Bupa. And I tell you all this not to show off or to make a subtle sales pitch, although I guess that can't hurt, but just to explain to you why on earth Reshma and Andrea have been so kind to invite me to speak to you about marketing this morning. So, your digital marketing audit and checklist. I'm aiming to help you do a mini audit of your online presence with this talk. As healthcare is often focused around the clinicians themselves, I'll be talking a lot about them, but I think there are hopefully plenty of people watching who work with the clinicians and can do this audit on their behalf too, so I hope this is very much a talk for everyone. As there's another session focusing on websites later on at the conference, I've agreed to cover some different aspects of your digital marketing today. So starting with the bios of clinicians in your private practice. And when I say bio, I mean the free text part of a web profile that describes the clinician, their expertise and their background. And you'll use your bio in plenty of places too. You may have a bio on hospital web profiles, insurer directories like Bupa and Vitality Finder, review platforms, and also on your own website. So between them, we're talking about websites with millions of visitors a month. These are a massively underrated part of your marketing. Research from Bupa shows that over half of people with health insurance wouldn't know how to find the right consultant if they needed treatment. And anecdotally, I can't believe it's that low. I have people regularly telling me this. Someone told me very recently that she actually cancelled her policy over it. She found the whole ordeal too stressful and said that she'd prefer to be sent to the right person by the NHS because they just didn't know who to see, and she just didn't want to have to make that decision. Which, is mad, really. So how do patients make a decision about which consultant or GP or clinician that they want to see? Well, they Google you, of course, and yes, they'll check your reviews and things like that, but only once you've made their shortlist in the first place. Before that, they're reading your profiles, they're reading your bios. So what makes a good bio? Well, I'm going to use some examples to demonstrate or highlight some good practice. Actually some bad practice later on as well, but this example is all about the good practice. I haven't run that past this particular consultant yet, so just in case, I'm going to try my best to anonymise his profile. So, every patient has some basic questions that they want answered, like, will this clinician be able to diagnose and treat my problem? And how much experience do they have with my condition? So in your audit of your profiles, ask yourself this: does your bio or your clinician's bio answer these questions? So straight away in this opening paragraph, opening sentence in fact, we can see exactly what this clinician does. He treats both adults and children for a range of ENT and thyroid conditions, including tonsillitis, neck lumps, cancer diagnosis, blocked nose and thyroid nodules. And it goes on, detailing his key areas of expertise. He then reinforces specific procedures shortly afterwards in the third paragraph, using both clinical and layperson terminology. This is a super strong start. Does your clinician's bio answer the patient question, will I be safe? Patients might not ask it out loud to many people perhaps because they feel they shouldn't, or they might be insulting towards the clinician or something like that, who knows. But I think we all know that our safety is our number one priority when it comes to our health. So there are a number of ways to demonstrate this. You could reference clinical outcomes if that's appropriate and you've got the stats. You can share reviews from happy patients. Or you can use some other factors to show it, like mentioning advanced training, or that you train the next generation of clinicians, or that you stay up to date with best practice. Just writing it down in your bio shows that you're thinking about it. And I know everyone thinks about patient safety, but not everyone states that they do. And to us in the know, in the industry, it's a given that it's your priority, but not to a nervous patient. Another question patients often have is something along the lines of, will they be friendly or approachable, understanding or a good listener, something like that. Patients obviously want to feel comfortable and that they'll be listened to, so you can use your profile to help answer the question. Again, you can make reference to reviews if you can, where patients have said something along those lines, or again, even just sharing that that's how you work in your day-to-day practice, like here, like in this example. It answers the question in the back of their mind and it puts the patient at ease. Another question many insured patients have, of course, is whether the clinician and the services will be covered by their insurance provider. So save them the hassle of ringing up their insurer or your MedSec and answer the question in your bio. I suppose my top tip for bios and profiles really, and it applies to your about page on your website too, as a matter of fact, although the profile is of you, although your about page is nominally about you, it's not really about you, it's about the patient. You're trying to help them make a decision about which clinician or provider to see. And for anyone who feels a bit uncomfortable about marketing in healthcare, that's the same lens that I suggest you see marketing through. Rather than thinking it's about shouting about yourself and telling everyone how wonderful you are, think of it as helping the patient make a decision about which clinician to see, by being as helpful as you can and giving as much information as you can. My next top tip, and I hope that's come through with the example that we've shown you actually, which is a really lovely patient-facing written piece, is don't copy and paste your CV. And I've seen enough of these to know that is something that happens really. Remember, you're trying to communicate with a lay member of the public, not to your peers or to a job interviewer. So, write for one person. Have your ideal patient persona in mind and write specifically for that person. Try not to write like you're trying to appeal to anyone and everyone. Write for your ideal patient persona. Brenda, aged 46, or Steve the runner, or whoever it is. Be concise too, but make every word count. And aim for around 600 words, even more if you can, but 600 words is a good marker. A higher word count gives you more to work with, but there may also be a search engine optimization benefit by having your bios rank better in the search engines if you fill it with great keywords like conditions and treatments. And that's more easily done when you have more words to play with. And lastly, people skim read online. Write in short sentences and keep paragraphs short. As an absolute max, go for 25 words per sentence, but even that's probably too much. Aim for 20 really, and 3 sentences per paragraph. And that gives you lots of white space around your text rather than a big wall of text that isn't so easily read or skim read. Photography. So I'm just going to cover headshot photography here in terms of giving you a checklist of things to look at in your audit, but I do want to talk about the importance of other photography here. So photography can really bring your practice to life and make it feel a little more familiar and comfortable for potential patients. Can you help them picture who it is that they're talking to on the phone when they're booking an appointment? By having a picture of your medical secretary or your receptionist. If you're a consultant who performs surgery, can you show them a picture of what you look like in scrubs? It can be quite scary seeing your doctor in scrubs for the first time when you're being wheeled off into theatre. Can you make it easier for potential patients to find you for the first time by showing them the outside of your building so they know what they're looking for? Or the car park, or even a short video of like how to get from the car park to the hospital, or if it's a slightly tricky place to find, something like that. What about making them feel more comfortable by showing them pictures of the waiting room? It's things like this that can really put a patient at ease and take one little anxiety away from them. It's also important to remember that good photos aren't just for your website either. A great set of photography assets can be used on social media, hospital or clinic marketing maybe, email marketing, advertising, press releases, almost anything you can think of, even on your Bupa profile, which we'll come on to later. So let's take a look at the headshot photography of your clinicians. I really recommend getting your headshot taken by a professional photographer, but if that just isn't possible, make sure your chosen photo is just of you, so not a group photo. A proper headshot, so just your head and shoulders only, not a cropped image from one larger one, especially not one taken at a social event or something like that. Against a blank, preferably white background, that makes it easier to Photoshop and to use elsewhere. Make sure that you take up most of the photo. Again, it's just so when you crop it down, it's still a high enough resolution and usable in many other places. Make sure it's of you smiling, but looking professional, of course. I mean, you are welcoming potential patients. Make sure it's in focus and well lit and of a high enough resolution. And I really recommend it's of you wearing your consulting attire or your uniform. Whatever you'd wear when the patient first meets you. And also, a top tip, make sure it's taken in landscape orientation, as it's way more versatile that way. Your web designer or other graphic designer will thank you for it. And lastly, please make it current. It should be a fair representation of what you look like now, not a few years ago when you were in med school. So here are a few examples of what not to do. So in the first image, you can see it's badly lit. There's a shadow on my face and there's an uneven background, even if it is fairly blank. And I'm a bit sweaty as well, so not exactly the most flattering of photos I could have shown you today. In the second image, you can see it's clearly taken while I'm on holiday. It's been cropped to take my wife out, and clearly isn't a professional headshot at all. But I've seen photos like this. You know, this may seem really obvious advice what I'm sharing with you today, but I wouldn't say it if I knew that everyone had really great photos. And finally, in the third image, you can see that the image is cropped at the shoulder, so it's a lot harder to use this photo elsewhere. And also it's not landscape, which again means it's harder to use. Apologies everyone for making you look at 4 of me at the same time now. The next thing I want to talk about is local search engine optimization, or local SEO. So that's optimizing your online presence to ensure you come up in the search results for cardiologist near me or private GP Kensington type searches. The quickest and easiest way to have a local presence online is to have your own Google business profile. I'm going to use Scion Clinic here as an example because Circle Health Group are particularly good with their Google business profiles. So anyway, hopefully you'll know what I mean when I say a Google business profile. I'm sure you've seen them whenever you've Googled a business before. It's these knowledge panels on the right hand side of the screen on a desktop or in the results on a mobile. Sometimes you'll see 3 listings under a picture of a map as well. So Google is really very sophisticated at understanding the intent behind the search, whether it's informational or the searcher wants to buy something or they want to find a product or a service. And it's those I'm looking for a type searches that trigger showing these Google business profiles. And everyone does these kind of searches. I'd put good money on everyone watching this having done a search for a product or a service or a shop and added your town or city or your location to the end of it. Or even searched near me at the end of your keyword. And people interact with these results. I guess it's the visual elements that draw our eyes to them. So, you know, people do view these listings and they do click them. So it's easy to set up your Google business profile if you haven't already got one. Just search Google business profile and you'll see the link and you'll be able to set up your profile for free. A quick plug, I do have a course on Google business profiles in my private practice surgery membership that covers this in greater detail and takes you through the process step by step. And we also offer a setup and management service too. I mean, it's simple to set up, it is trickier to do them really, really well and to really get the benefit out of them. So my best advice here is to take advantage of everything the profile has to offer. So most profiles end up doing this top half of the profile, so to speak, pretty well. So they add their location, photos and logos, contact info, opening hours. I recommend you do your phone answering hours, by the way, and not clinic times if you're based in a particular hospital or something like that. And maybe you collect a few reviews, and although most people could do that better as well, because it's all about having a regular, consistent roll of reviews coming through. But most have got a few in there, so you've got a star rating. But not many people will go to this extra level of detail, and that's what makes this such an opportunity for you. Google wants to show profiles of businesses that have full, rich, complete profiles. But hardly anyone really does that. So if you do, you're more likely to be shown in the local and the map results. If you add products and services, a short intro paragraph, ask and answer some frequently asked questions, you can actually ask questions on your own profile. But if that feels weird, just ask some friends and family to ask them. Just make sure you answer them. You can list your other social media profiles now, although I think Google are testing adding these automatically, but check that they are all on there. And one of my favourite tips is to start thinking of your Google business profile as another social network, because you can add posts to it too. By doing this and using all the features available on the profile, you're sending positive signals to Google that you're a genuine business and that you're wanting to be as helpful as you can to their users, who are your potential customers as well, remember. And that's what Google wants. It wants to be really helpful to its users. So it's much more likely to show your profile in those top 3 map results or in the knowledge panel over someone who hasn't done all of these extra steps. And as I say, most profile owners don't do it. So it's a huge opportunity for you and a relatively quick win. My absolute pro tip here is to make your website link from your business profile go to a dedicated page on your website for that specific location. So if you write the clinic or hospital address on that page and you embed a Google map of the location, that sends signals back to Google that you're a legitimate business, and it means you're more likely to be in the map-based results compared to someone who doesn't do that. And not many people do, as I said, so you'll be ahead of the game and ahead of the competition. Hospital web profiles are also a very important opportunity if you work from a private hospital. I appreciate this is possibly the least relevant subject for the wider private healthcare audience, so I'm not going to cover this in too much detail. But to tell you, if you do work from a private hospital, I have a lot of advice on another video on this channel, so do check that out. But if I was to give you my top 3 tips for online web profiles, for hospital profiles, 1, so it might sound too simple, and it's something I'm going to say a lot, but make sure that every relevant field is completed as fully as it can be. Write concisely, but as much as you can in every single field, just like in the Google business profile. Complete every section you can, because that advice applies to all of your web profiles really. And it's for 2 reasons. 1, those profiles are powered by a search function, and behind every search function is an algorithm. They do vary in complexity, so hospital ones probably aren't quite as complicated as Bupa Finder, for example, but essentially the more data you have on your profile, the more the algorithms have to work with, so the more likely you'll appear in the results. So it's just a good habit to get into, completing them as fully as you can. The second reason it's so important is the same as we talked about at the beginning though. You're creating these profiles for your human readers, your potential patients too. They're trying to make a decision about who to choose. How can they do that with minimal information about you? And it's also just a much better look too. If you really engaged with your profile, you look more interested, you look more professional, and more like someone a patient would like to see. The next tip is to understand that these directories on hospital websites, on the big group websites I should say really, they're relational databases, meaning that the consultant or doctor profile webpage is connected or linked to treatment and condition pages and hospital location pages, and all vice versa. They're all interconnected. That means if you're a rheumatologist and you only have arthritis treatment as a linked treatment on your profile, when someone does a search for gout or calcium crystal diseases or fibromyalgia, you won't come up in the search results. So nobody will ever see your profile for those conditions and you'll never get that patient. Likewise, I've worked with a consultant who didn't have his profile linked to one of the locations he worked from. So again, if someone was looking for a consultant of his specialty at that particular hospital, he was never going to get those profile views and never get those patients. So please do audit your hospital profiles and make sure that every possible relevant condition and location from the list the hospital gives you is on your profile. Remembering that new condition pages are probably added by the website teams on a fairly regular basis. So what was accurate last year might have a new condition missing this year. And lastly, top tip number 3 is to audit your online booking and check that all the slots you think you have available are being reflected on the website. If you work at a hospital or group that offers online booking, it's important to know that which slots they display on their website may be defined by a set of rules, and not all of those slots, and not all of your slots might meet those rules for a variety of reasons. That means it might not necessarily match the total number of slots in your diary. So compare your online availability to your clinic schedule and see if there are any rules that are restricting your online availability. It may be that that's just the rules that apply to everybody across the hospital, and that's how the hospital have implemented it, or the group have implemented it. Or it might be that there's a simple tweak behind the scenes that you can do to your schedule, and all of a sudden your availability increases on the website and you possibly get more patients from that. So let's talk insurer web profiles. The AXA Health Specialist Search tool is pretty basic with little information in the listing, but you'll be surprised at how many times I've checked for a clinician and the list of locations is inaccurate or incomplete. Bearing in mind that location is the second most important factor for patients after the clinician themselves, it's so important to make sure that your locations are accurate with the insurers. So please take a moment to audit your AXA Health profile and make sure all the relevant locations are on display. Bupa Finder. Now, I could do an entire talk about this one just on its own, so I'll have to stick to the top line advice here. So first off, let's say you're lucky enough to come up in the search results. What does that look like? Well, this is an example search result, and this very first section here is pulled through from the specialises in field from the overview section of your profile. So does this reflect what you want your practice to be and the patients you want to see? If not, it's easily amended, and when people are scanning the results and they immediately see that'll probably help and encourage them to click through. This section here is pulled through from your areas of interest, also in the overview section. Is it written in an easy to read way? Unfortunately, with these hyphens, it's just not that easy to scan or read. So can you use commas or semicolons or something like that to help with the formatting? Otherwise, the content itself is pretty good at explaining what this consultant specialises in. I mentioned earlier that there's an algorithm that powers search functions, and a lot of the following tips will help the algorithm want to show your profile if you can tick all of these boxes. Now, it's not for me to tell you how to run your business, but if you can agree to be fee assured, then of course Bupa are going to prefer you to a clinician who isn't, and that is reflected by the algorithm, and you'll come up higher in the search results. The same applies if you're on the open referral network, and it also helps to verify your profile too. I think you need to do this annually. Lastly, if you can meet all the criteria and jump through the hoops and achieve platinum status, then again, you'll be one of the first on the list when it comes to being offered to patients and appearing high up in the search results. As I say, this starts to become more of a business decision than a marketing tactic. So if you don't want to do these things, then there's certainly no judgment from me, but they are the UK's largest insurer, so it's a decision to make and something to think carefully about. And as I've said a couple of times already, it's really simple advice, but important advice. Complete as many of the fields as possible, because a rich, complete profile will always perform better in both the search algorithm and when a patient wants to find out more about you. And also customer service advisors from Bupa too, in this case. So in your audit, make sure you have a complete profile with all the relevant fields filled in with as much concise information as possible. And it's the same thing really when auditing your Vitality Finder profile. Check that every possible relevant field has some good patient-facing information in it. Otherwise, we end up with an incomplete profile. If you can find a way of working with your MedSec, that means that you can accept bookings through their platform, then that's a good thing too from a patient journey perspective. And of course, their platform is built by Doctify, the review platform. So obviously the number of reviews and the average star rating play heavily into their algorithm too. Lastly, WPA. So again, their profiles are pretty basic, so there's little you can do here. However, please note you can spotlight your key services here, so please make sure they're mentioned, focusing on the main conditions you want your practice to consist of. And also make sure you have a nice patient-facing paragraph or two under the areas of medical interest section. And lastly, that your locations are up to date and accurate. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you very much for listening. We've covered clinician bios, photography, local SEO with Google business profiles, and we've touched on hospital and insurer directories, so an awful lot. So if anyone has any questions about those or any other aspect of marketing private healthcare, I'll be glad to take them in the comments below. Thanks very much.